showing a fully automated assembly line. So we'll start over at the workshop where the vacuum, vacuum container, vacuum sorter is. Again, if the vacuum sorter touches a container, including the workshop, it'll start pulling stuff out of there. Great, there's some gold stuck on top. Whatever. I can do cleanup later. So as long as it can touch it, then it can pull stuff out of it, and it'll pull everything out of your workshop, obviously. So I have that feeding into this, and I have a few of them linked together, so I can climb up and actually not have to have all my workshop stuff on the ground level. And since we are so high up, I decided to put in windows and a couple of guard posts. You see here it comes off of that, drops onto the conveyor belt. Conveyor belt will take it across here. I am using the mod, the Mechanics Expanded mod, which adds a couple of new machines, like this recycler, so if anything in my inventory can be broken down into components, the recycler will do that. I have it here early on in my little catwalk, which actually makes. I'm gonna have to put something here for support, just for the visual of it. But I think it makes a really nice sort of like bridgeway, and that's a 4-story elevator where I put paneled walls around the edge, because you actually can attach walls to the different levels of the elevator. And each level is separate, so it's not actually attached to the device itself, it's attached to the scaffolding of it. So if we follow the path along here, we come to my sorting plant. This one sorts everything. Since the first one is just pulling everything out of storage, it could pull things that if the recycler cannot break something down, it'll pass it through unchanged. This will then, what this does is it's been fed with, this is the component sorter, so it's been fed with all of, one copy of all of the component items. And so if it's a component item, it passes through into here. If it's not a component item, it goes into here, which is just basically a generic, it's just a regular storage item. And the regular storage item I'm using, basically just to store all of my non-breakdownable items. Pretty simple. So over here, when it passes through into here, this one is our first of our sorters for the actual workshop. So anything that my entire workshop is going to use, there's a component in here. And with a component in there, it feeds. So if it's not something that I'm going to be using for crafting here in the workshop, in the assembly plant, it goes over to here. And this is also from that mod, Mechanics Expanded. And basically, it's a container, a standard container, but what it does is it dumps the thing back into the workshop. So this is all stuff that can be crafted, but it's not being used. So it's dumped back into the workshop, as opposed to the ones that can't be crafted and used are dumped into a separate storage bin. I could theoretically dump them back into the workshop, but there's no real point. So the ones that are being used, such as like adhesive there, go through here. I've got a counter set up. It's set for 3. And that makes sure that it's not perfect, obviously. You'd have to adjust the timing and whatnot. But the idea here is that this way, not all of your components that are used for crafting get used up. Some will be vented back off into your normal system. I may have to do something to make this thing last longer. I'll have to look into that to see if I can make it have a longer. And that's just a standard, that's one of the trip wires. Now what I could do is now this is just the trip wire attached to the power. I could try switching it out for the tripwire toggle switch, as opposed to just a regular tripwire. And then, you know, I have it set for a 3 count, so when it counts 3, it sends power. The toggle one would mean that it would send power and it would hold power, and then you would have to wait for another 3 to come through in order for it to switch back, which might work better. It's a work in progress, obviously. This one here just goes back to my workshop, like I said. This way, like roughly half of the components will end up going into my workshop, and the other half will go back into, well, half will go onto the assembly line, the other half will go to the workshop. Now here's where things started getting a little bit tricky, because what we have here is 2 items, the Pyrotechnics Forge and the Armor Forge, and both of them use adhesive in their ingredients. So after a lot of fiddling, I finally came up with a workable solution. It's not ideal, but it's a workable solution. And so I did. I used another one of these brake switches. And so what I did is I told this thing if it's ballistic fiber and aluminum, which are exclusively used by the Armor Forge, and everything else is used by the Pyrotechnics with the exception of aluminum, which I needed to break off. So the 2 that are exclusively used by the Armor Forge go over here, straight path right to the Armor Forge, goes into the Armor Forge. The ones that the adhesive, along with the, I think it's what, cloth and fertilizer, will go into here, which are then fed into the Pyrotechnics Forge, or when this thing switches back, it's fed into up here, and it's fed into all 3 of those will be fed into this, which goes up to here, and if you follow the track down, you see it goes into a hopper, which drops it back onto the Armor Forge. Granted, that means that the Armor Forge is going to have some cloth and some fertilizer in there, but I couldn't find a really good way to cleanly break the 2. So, it's not ideal. And of course, to get them down to my storage on the first floor where I store all my produced items, it's a pretty simple little conveyor going from each one. This is my hopper. I think I must be in, am I in a toggle free camera? So here's my level, here's level 3, which I just threw some extra beds in there because my people were complaining. They drop out of the hopper, come down here, and this runs down for a couple extra levels into my main storage. And that's about it. So I will see you all in the future.